Hey, welcome back for another episode of Porn Brain Rewired, the podcast with me, Dr. Trish Leigh. Today, what we're going to talk about is how bad is your porn addiction? I get asked this question all the time. In today's episode, we're going to break it down. So first, I want you to think about the idea of addiction. Just about nobody wants to admit to themselves, never mind admit to somebody else, that they are addicted to a substance or a behavior, even one that's normalized. So in this episode, I want us to consider the idea of addiction and what leads there. And from there, we're going to go into realizing if porn, masturbation, the cycle of PMO, a dopamine dependency, if it might have a hold on you. Of course, at the end of this episode, I'm going to give you your brain hack strategy for the day and a way that I can help you if you want, so that you can move forward if in fact you do consider that you might have a compulsion or an addiction. All right, let's dig in. Before we do, I just want to remind you that this podcast is sponsored by the nonprofit organization that I have founded. It's called Porn Brain Prevention. You can find it at pornbrainprevention.org. It's a really important mission so that we as a community can go upstream and help children and young people never become addicted to pornography. This way we can pay it forward. So if you want to join me in that cause, please go over to pornbrainprevention.org and donate. Become part of the tribe that is helping the future generation break the shackles that they are becoming stuck in. All right, moving on. So let's talk about this idea of addiction. So before I break it down into its components, let's think about some of the behaviors that go along with a compulsion or an addiction. So we know that at the core, what we're talking about is having to act in a certain way, consume a certain substance, or to do something because it makes you feel better. What I refer to as self-soothing and self-stimulating simultaneously. So in the case of porn, what happens is you are pulled back into the screen by the need for dopamine to help you feel better. Now, let me give you a couple examples of how this plays out for some of the people that I work with still. It's very typical, a lot of these behaviors. So the idea is, you know your partner leaves the house Friday at 3 for an engagement that she always goes to. So Friday at noon, you begin to have urges because you are looking forward to her leaving so that you can engage in porn, masturbation, and orgasm, the PMO cycle. The whole point of this is you're looking forward to those times when you know that you can act out and your brain will count on it. Now, another example is a gentleman who broke his right hand, his hand that he typically masturbates with. And he told me this from the horse's mouth, that he figured he could just go a couple weeks while he had a cast on his hand without watching porn and masturbating. And he was shocked to find, a couple hours later, after having his cast put on, he's trying to figure out how to masturbate efficiently with his left hand. So he's like, I can't believe what I did because I needed to get my fix, essentially. And we're going to talk about that fix in a minute. Other examples are you find yourself acting in ways that you might not be morally congruent with. So one example of this is lusting. When you go out, you can't help yourself but to check out all the women, especially the younger, scantily clad women. You can't keep your eyes off of them. Lusting is looking for dopamine. So even when your partner's mad at you, you still keep doing it. You don't even know why, and you can't stop it. And another extreme example of this is you take pictures of strangers out in public because you find them attractive and you want to look at them again later. Nobody wants to engage in behaviors that would violate other people's privacy or violate their human rights. And I know that's a bold statement that nobody wants to do it. people do it and they think they want to do it because they're wounded. And part of this work is inner child wounds and healing them. So I want you to know the acting out behavior that you're doing, it's a survival mode mechanism. And there's so many mistakes and so many myths surrounding porn consumption that we're going to dive into in a minute. But what I want you to know right now is that I would like you to evaluate some of those behaviors that I just gave an example of. You know, do you go back to porn even though you don't want to? Do you look forward to the sessions because of the physical and mental space that you're in? Do you engage in porn on a cycle? Do you find yourself acting in ways that cross moral boundaries? And outside of those moments, you say you're not going to do it again, but in those moments, you do. Porn addiction is real. I know if you look hard enough, you can hear people telling you that it's not real. It in fact is real. And so many people make the mistake of thinking it's just harmless. It only affects me. It doesn't affect anybody else. So let's liken it to alcohol consumption. And of course, alcohol is a substance. And of course, the behavior is normalized. So when I record this right now, it's Friday. I'm sure people are in mass exodus going out tonight to consume large amounts of alcohol. Totally normalized. But normalized does not mean that it's healthy for you. And unlike porn, alcohol in moderation isn't good for you, but it isn't incredibly damaging like porn is. So let's go back to the analogy that if you begin to drink alcohol, then you are using it. That's the first step in the steps moving towards addiction. So first there's use. So you go out and you use alcohol. Now, before you know it, you're going out every night and using alcohol. This becomes misuse. You're using it too much. Then we move into the third phase, which is abuse. Abuse is you should be working, but instead you pour yourself a cocktail because it's 2 o'clock on a Friday. That is abuse. You're supposed to be doing something else and instead you're drinking, or you're on your 5th drink of the day. Abuse means you're no longer using it in a healthy way. You are using that substance or that behavior in an unhealthy way. Then there's a bridge into compulsion from abuse. Compulsion is when the behavior or the substance is using you instead of you using it. And what I mean by that is the tables have turned. You now need it. You're no longer using it. You absolutely need it to not feel bad, opposed to in the first stages, you're using it to feel good. Now you need it to not feel bad. And I'm going to give you an exercise so you can think about how this plays out in your own life. So from compulsion moves into addiction, which means you need to use this substance or behavior on a frequent, consistent, and often intense schedule just so you don't go through withdrawals and you don't feel bad. Essentially what's happened in your brain is the homeostasis, the healthy norm, has now been changed, and there's a new neo-homeostasis that includes the need for the substance or behavior. So in alcoholism, what happens is that dependency on alcohol increases, and now that person needs to drink a lot every day or a lot every weekend. They're trying not to drink at most times. So I want you to keep that in your mind. Trying not to consume. So now, of course, let's take this back to porn. When it comes to porn, it's the same thing, but you might think about it differently, and that's why I wanted to give you the alcohol analogy. So you might think, oh, I don't consume porn every day. I only do it 2-3 times a week. Or if you do consume porn every day, I want you to think about it just like alcohol. So if you're watching porn in the morning, it's like pouring a drink in the morning. If you're watching porn in the middle of work, it's like pouring a drink in the middle of work. If you're watching a lot of porn all day Saturday, it's like drinking all day Saturday. So don't make the mistake of thinking it's only harmless and it only affects you, because that will affect your work productivity, your ability to think, your mental and physical health. It will impact your relationships of all kinds. So I want you to know this is real. Use becomes misuse, becomes abuse, becomes compulsion, becomes addiction. Okay, so let's talk about next what is your brain hack strategy for the day that I want to share with you so you can shed more light, but also make a plan to move forward. So I want you to think about your life right now. And we just kind of did that in thinking about your porn habit and how it fits into your life and how it's influencing your thoughts, your feelings, and your behaviors, and especially your behaviors around your interactions with other people. So when you go into porn, you're escaping, you're self-soothing, self-stimulating, and you're no longer approaching and engaging your life. You're no longer engaging with your people. What porn does is it numbs your feelings, and it numbs the bad ones or the challenging ones, but it also numbs the good ones and the loving ones. It is shifting your brain into artificial neutral so you can't feel as much, and that disengages you from your life. So the first step of your brain hack is to think about, where are you right now in your life? How often are you consuming porn? How consistently, which is different. Frequency, then there's consistency. Are you doing it on a schedule? Is it every Monday morning to get through your workday? Is it every single night to be able to fall asleep? Those are dependencies. Then think about what your life would look like if you weren't dependent on porn, because that will shed some light on all of the other things that you could be doing. And what we're talking about in this video and in this podcast episode is, how bad is your porn addiction? Your porn addiction is as bad as the hold that it has on you. I'm still going to share with you a way that you can quantify it, but if it's showing up in a lot of places of your life, and if you can identify frequency, consistency, especially intensity, especially if you're crossing moral boundaries, especially if you're doing that in your life. I've been making analogies between porn consumption and smoking, and I plan on making another video, so I don't want to share too much in this video, but it is literally blowing my mind how smoking increased over time and then how it reversed. And one thing I want to share with you here is what I've already been telling you. The way that the smoking epidemic reversed was by sheer recognition and understanding, person by person choosing not to smoke because they became aware of the dangers. And the three things that made people stop smoking is, number one, they began to understand it is truly addictive, which is why I want to make this video so you can really think about that for yourself. Without putting the word on yourself, think about the concepts I'm talking about here. Number two, why people quit smoking is because they realized it caused cancer. I want you to know, porn causes ED. I'm pausing there so you can let that sink in. Porn causes ED and sexual arousal dysfunction, what I'm calling SAD. Porn makes you sad. So when people found out that smoking caused cancer, it helped them to do the difficult thing of quitting because they were dependent on cigarettes. Porn causes ED. I want you to know that. Number three is that they realized the ill effects of secondhand smoke. So I also want you to know porn is influencing your interactional style and your communication abilities, which is in fact affecting every single one of your relationships with your partner, with your boss, with your colleagues, with your children, with your friends. It is secondhand smoke. It is impacting them. And hopefully that empowers you to be able to step away, which can be challenging. It's not always easy. So here's what I want you to do for your brain hack strategy. Write down what your life might look like. If you're arguing with your partner all the time, that likely won't be a thing in the future. If you are struggling at work, or maybe you feel like you've lost your motivation and you don't love your work anymore and you used to, I want you to know Porn sucks the feelings out of everything. Your partner, your work, your hobbies, your life. It's numbing you from the beauty and the joy and the love that could be in your life. So write down, if you were living your best life right now, what would it look like? What would you be doing? Who would be in it? What would your interactions look like? You know what's happened to me a few times lately is that there's some stuff going on yet again in my home, and we are having our HVAC system replaced. So my kids, which are primarily young adults, had to sleep on the main floor and in the basement, or it's done up, but in the lower level basement. So my son's below me, my daughter's right outside my bedroom door. And they have recently said that it's quote unquote annoying when they are trying to go to sleep and they hear me giggling and laughing. And the reason is because I'll jump in bed and I'll say something weird to the hubs. The hubs will say something weird back, and he and I will laugh. And you know what? If my kids are annoyed because the hubs and I are laughing as we share about our day or whatever we're doing before we go to sleep, so be it. I can count on my hand how many times I've heard my mom laugh, never mind burst out into laughter. So what's happened a bunch of times in the kitchen lately too is with all my kids, we are just laughing. Somebody's being weird, the other people are laughing. And it is such the spice of life. That is what I want. That's why when they're out there doing anything, I put anything on hold. I put work on hold. I put my own self-care on hold so I can go laugh with them. So I want that for you. Laughter and joy and love and connection and community and time together is one of my highest priorities right now before all these kids flee the nest. So you know what? If they're annoyed because this girl's giggling, I love it because it is a goal in my life. So for your brain hack strategy, figure out what you want. What do you want in your life? I also want really clean air. That's why we're having the HVAC system replaced. So figure it out and then intentionally create it. And porn's not part of it. It's sucking the life out of you. It's escapism. It's dissociation. It's unreality and fantasy. There's no mistakes or myths about that. That's the truth. You're escaping into an unreality that's sexualized to give your brain high levels of dopamine. But unfortunately, in doing so, it is desensitizing the reward center in your brain, making it so those dopamine receptors aren't firing up when you're in the kitchen and there's laughter. Your brain needs super hypersexualized content to feel. My brain needs teenagers telling dumb jokes in the kitchen. That's what I want for you. Okay, so figure out where your life is now and what you want your life to look like 1 year from now. One of my clients in December said to me that he wanted to get into flow state. And flow state is something, peak performance is something that I help people with in my practice also. I have a lot of high-level elite performers, and I'm helping them optimize their brain performance patterns so they can keep going and get to the next level. And so one of my clients said, I can't believe that I'm even considering how I can get and stay in flow state because a year ago, I couldn't stop watching porn and masturbating. That's the difference a year can make. That's the difference healing your brain can make. Okay, so before we wrap up, I want you to know, I want to answer the question, how bad is my porn addiction? So give yourself a rating of 1 to 10 on a scale based on that scale of use to misuse to abuse to compulsion to addiction. Does porn have a hold on you? Give yourself a 1 to 10 Likert scale rating. Now, what I want you to know is in my work, I can show you that definitively. So when I perform a QEEG brain map, which I work with people all over the world, it can all be done in the comfort of your home, and then we meet on Zoom. I will go through your entire brain map and I will show you the areas of brain dysfunction, the levels of brain dysfunction, and the brain dysfunction patterns that are there. Those are the 3 things that I can show you. And when I do that, I will also give you a brain dysfunction score. The higher the score, the more dysfunction likely, the greater your addiction. Now, of course, I also look at your history and the way that you're using your brain and you're living your life and your lifestyle. This all informs your brain performance pattern, and together we can see how much your brain is caught in what I call strained brain, the porn cycle, or drained brain, that creates sexual arousal dysfunction, or sadly, both. So if you want to know specifically how bad your porn addiction is, go over to drtrishleigh.com, click the button that says QEEG Brain Map, Work with Dr. Trish, so that you and I can spend an hour together going over your brain and seeing exactly what's going on in there, the areas, the levels, and the patterns of dysfunction. I would love to be able to set you on the right course to be able to overcome porn addiction if it is a struggle for you. Once you figure out you have an addiction, that's just the beginning, my friend. Figuring out the solution is really the road to recovery. And if you're interested in the solution, again, go over to my website. I offer a 90-day, it should take you around 90-day program, but you have it for life. It's called Porn-Free Brain Forever. I renamed it to reflect the idea that you can have this program forever if you need it, and you can stay in it forever for accountability and support to keep you out of the screen. So go on over Porn-Free Brain Forever and schedule a map with me so I can set you on the road to recovery and to the life that you've always wanted and that you deserve. All right, until next time, if you've heard, my dog Chewbacca's been snoring in the background. I forgot to put him out. So until next time, control your brain or it'll control you. I'll see you then.